Hey, it's Dr. J. Hi students, I am here to do another lecture on chapter 4. For you, it is entitled Business Ethics and Social Responsibility. Okay? So, the chapter objectives outline defining ethics and explaining the concepts of universal ethical standards, describing business ethics and ethical dilemmas, discussing how ethics relates to both the individual and the organization, defining responsible social ethics and examining the impact of the stakeholders, examining the role of social responsibilities in the global arena, and also describing how companies evaluate their efforts to be socially responsible. All right? And responsive. So the first section starts out by outlining the ethics and social responsibility, a close relationship. So ethics is one of those topics that varies from person to person because it is something that is a part of your character. So your ethics and your morals are part of your character. Now organizations have ethics and morals as well. Okay, and the business organization ethics and morals are based mostly on their mission goals, mission statements, their organizational standards, what they stand for, what their causes are, and things like that. Okay, all right. Defining ethics, murkier than you think. Yeah. So ethics is good. Ethics are great. Morals are great. But as the book defines it, it's referred to as a set of beliefs about what is right or wrong, good or bad. Okay, so we all have different standards for what we would call good or bad, or right or wrong. Okay, so it's important to understand whatever the ethical policy is of the organization, or if you're an entrepreneur, it's important to have an ethical policy in place. Okay, so that way all your employees have a standard of understanding what is considered good or bad, right or wrong. Okay, so for instance, if you were a business that, use my previous example from another lecture, made paper. Okay, ethically and morally, it would not be morally correct for you to, get trees that weren't indigenous to the area or that were, a dying species or a dying breed of a tree. It's important, some companies have had this issue where they were using, trees from the Amazon or from other areas where trees were indigenous to those particular areas. And it was a matter of, wiping out whole colonies of species and animals because of getting those resources from those certain areas. All right, so ethically, it's wrong. Morally, it's wrong, but it's based on your business model as well. And sometimes you may not have a ethics policy in place, but because of being exposed from employees with technology and cell phones, which we talked about in chapter 3, you could find yourself in an ethical or immoral situation based on your policies. All right? Okay. So the next page talks about legal ethical matrices. And it breaks down some pretty distinctive segments of legal and unethical versus legal and ethical. All right, so a good example is for legal and unethical is paying living wages to workers in developing countries. All right, that's what it's saying. And then the legal and ethical side of it is contributing to the community, respecting the environment. Okay, so it kind of goes hand in hand with my example of trees in the rainforest and not using those natural resources because of the fact that they are indigenous to certain areas, and they, house many different types of species of animals that contribute to the environment. And then the next section talks about illegal and unethical. versus illegal and ethical. So illegal and unethical is embezzling money. That's a really good example. Illegal and ethical, providing a rock bottom price only to distributors in an unserved area. Okay, it's still illegal, but it's still ethical. Per the book. I'm not going to comment on that one. All right, so universal ethical standards are a responsive, a reasonable goal or wishful thinking. So this is asking the question, is universal ethics, standards, is it a reasonable goal, or is it really, totally wishful thinking? And it has to go back to what the organization and what the business and what the employees consider what is ethical or unethical, okay? So universal ethical standards that apply to everyone across the board, the broad spectrum of situations. That's the quick version of that. And it's kind of hard to put an across-the-board ethical standard when you have people from different cultures, different creeds, different environments, different ages, different backgrounds, different personalities, different genders. All these things are contributing factors to whether you think something is right or wrong or good or bad. Okay? All right. But some universal ethical standards, okay, that outline are things like trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. And it kind of goes back to, different colleges' mission statements. One that stands out to me is stewardship, community, respect, which is in here as well, one of the universal, understanding, taking personal responsibility, academic honesty. These are all different types of ethical standards. And, it's really important to understand that just because you believe trustworthiness means something, somebody else may think it's something else. And that goes back to, whether or not you think that universal ethical standards are a reasonable goal or wishful thinking, which what the section talks about. Okay? All right. Ethics and the individual, the power of one. So ethics and the individual, the power of one, outline some things that may contribute to individual understanding of ethics versus what a business or organization may consider ethical. So a good example is, I want to say, since we're talking about economic crisis, Enron, which is, I think, one of the companies that this chapter goes over later on. But it goes back to what you consider to be ethical and non-ethical. Just because you work for an organization and they're giving you a paycheck and and you're getting an income from that doesn't mean necessarily that they can make you do unethical things to get that job done. Okay? And it's really a matter of personal virtue, of if you're willing to do something that is unethical to have you keep and have your job, then that's fine. And sometimes you're not. So it depends on what you consider your ethics at work and what you can deal with yourself. But when it comes to being illegal, non-illegal, or having an ability to understand the difference, then you have to really consult either HR or the lawyer team or whoever's there at the organization. But for the most part, it's really important to do that. But okay, so I'm rambling on about that because I can go on and on about ethics. But the next page talks about the code of ethics. Okay, so the code of ethics is basically a written document of ethics standards that you're going to go by, where this is the code, meaning that this is what we're going to use, this is how it's going to be. It kind of gives a platform and a foundation of what is going to be considered ethical and what is not going to be considered ethical. All right. Okay, the next one is defining social or responsibility, making the world a better place. So social responsibility is a mouthful of information that is basically an obligation of a business to contribute to society. And it's a big deal because society is complex and different and multi-layered and all these great things. But businesses, they're not only supposed to take away from the community, but they're also supposed to give back to the community. That's what the stewardship is really about. Stewardship is one of those academic universal ethical standards. Okay, but it's something that is determined by the organization and by the business. Okay, so it's not like it's mandatory. All right. This section also talks about whistleblowers, which brings up Enron again. So if it wasn't for the Enron whistleblower, then none of that would have came to light. There would have still been embezzlement. There would have still been havoc and chaos, and ultimately Enron would have still been corrupting a lot of different agencies, people, organizations, things like that. Okay, if you don't know about the Enron scandal, then I recommend you Googling it and just learning more about that. All right. Okay, so onward to more information about social responsibility at work. All right, so in your book, it outlines a couple of different firms that examine their social responsibility. So one of them was the Clorox company, and the Clorox company was really interesting that they put that in there because recently, within the last, what was that, in 2008, they actually started a line called GreenWorks. And GreenWorks is supposed to be a contributing factor to the environment that Clorox wanted to make sure that they were paying it forward, being that their products are predominantly, bleach, so it goes into our water system. And there's no way of filtering that out because it's a chemical that it's mixed in. But it's really important that they wanted to, take responsibility and say, okay, well, we know our products may or may not be hazardous, so let's, start a new line called GreenWorks, which is a little bit more environmental friendly. Okay. Tyson Foods, it says they had been accused of unfair business practices, and but in 2009, the factory farmer gave nearly 11% of the profits to charity. Now, there's different ways of social responsibility. It doesn't necessarily have to be towards the environment. It could be something in a monetary based, where they're basically saying, okay, take this. This is equal to, if not, the same as us doing something else. But this is what we can do. Okay, Kraft has been accused many times of being the cause of obesity, and Kraft now tries to align itself with healthier snacks. But for a while there, the Kraft's foods were predominantly for young children and in-school marketing. And there's a lot of sugar in the foods. There's a lot of processed things in the foods. One of the best ways that I think when you're looking at marketing products, especially food, and when it comes to different businesses, is just to look at the nutrition labels. So a lot of times that's why the nutrition labels have changed, because of the fact that somebody came forward and said, I want to know what's in this food. You need to put it on the nutritional label. Okay, so thanks to somebody coming forth, kind of like a whistleblower, but not the same. It's just, information that we're entitled to have, especially if we're ingesting it. All right. Bank of America is really important because Bank of America is not just Bank of America. It's actually national bank. So many different nations are involved with Bank of America. Just a little tidbit there. All right, and then AIG, of course, because during the bailout, we all saw in the news how AIG had received their bailout money, and instead of using it for those purposes, they went on elaborate vacations and, had all these excursions and all these things they were doing. And it was kind of a slap in the face because, you know, the rest of the United States is trying to make it work and, you know, really struggling with, you know, the financial, the housing crisis, and AIGs giving out bonuses and going on vacation. So, yeah, that was interesting. All right. The next page, we're going to get into some of the additional responsibilities of consumers. All right. Value, honesty, and communication. Those are some responsibilities of consumers. We really look for those as consumers. We believe what the packaging says. If it says low fat, low sodium, then we believe it's low fat, low sodium. Okay. But it's also important to know that the businesses are there to marketing and advertise. So just flip it over, like I said earlier, and be mindful of that. So one of the best ways, if you want to learn something about a product or business, is the Freedom of Information Act. So public companies have to have their papers public and online and available for consumers to read. So that's where that one section, the right to be informed, comes from. All right, so you have a right to be informed, right? So the information is there. You can go grab it, see it, read it, challenge it, do whatever you want with it. That's the benefit of the Freedom of Information Act and companies being public. Also, the right to choose, which is the freedom of choice, which is a fundamental right, of a capitalist U.S. economy. And then also the right to be heard. So you have a right to be heard. Social responsibility, socially responsible companies make it easy for consumers to express the legitimate complaints. And oftentimes they ask for them. They say, okay, here's a survey, let me know what you thought. And they literally take all that input and they go to their marketers, their advertisers, their solicitors, their consumers, and they say, okay, is this a real thing or is this just one isolated event? Okay. All right. All right. Social responsibility towards the environment. I love this section. It is all in green. I love how they changed the font because of talking about the environment. So businesses are being more and more mindful of the environment because a lot of times, you know, they're processing plants or producing chemicals that are going to the ocean, that are going into our water systems, that, you know, are going places. And oftentimes in rural states and areas, there's been drilling and what do we call it when you're fracking for oil, things like that. And when you're fracking for oil in certain areas, it can get into the water system of, you know, the local, you know, people there. And I remember seeing a couple of documentaries where people were actually, you know, lighting their water and their water catching on fire because there was oil in the water, okay, toxins in the water. And so that's really important. So companies in that area were really mindful of that and have tried to work to fix those kinds of things. But the environment is really important because we only have one environment. Not to get on a high horse about that, but it's a huge responsibility, especially if you're a large corporation. All right. Okay. So ethical and social responsibility in the global arena, the House of Mirrors. Okay. So this section talks about globalization that has made ethics and social responsibility even more complicated for workers at every level. Because the workforce is just a huge slew of new workers and newly graduates. A lot of companies are bringing in new people and they may not be as thorough with the training or the development that they should. And sometimes it's cheaper, you know, to outsource the training, which we talked about in chapter 3. You can outsource training because it's a commodity with different companies. But then you're kind of skipping over, you know, teaching your employees, okay, this is our ethical policy. This is how we run things. This is what we do. Okay. All right. Okay. So that was chapter 4. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to contact me, either email, call, or come by my office. And I would love to explain anything else into more detail for you. All right, I am Dr. J, and I am here for your success. All right, have a wonderful day.